The chamber was massive and silent as death itself. High Arbiter Velkoth stood at the center platform, with his crystalline body reflecting light in 1,000 directions. Behind him stretched rows upon rows of holographic projections, showing representatives from 900 different alien civilizations. Some looked like clouds of gas that shifted colors when they spoke. Others were giants made of living rock. A few appeared as nothing more than patterns of light that hurt human eyes to look at directly. At the very center of this enormous hall stood 3 humans looking very small and very alone. Commander Jake Morrison kept his face blank even though his heart was racing. He had trained for years to hide his emotions, but this was different. This was not a training exercise. This was real. And the fate of every person on Earth depended on what happened in the next few minutes. To his left stood Amy Chen, who was gripping her datapad so hard her knuckles had turned white. To his right was Ben Torres, who kept shifting his weight from foot to foot like he wanted to run but knew he could. Not Velkoth raised 3 of his arms, and the murmuring from the alien representative stopped immediately. His voice came through the translation devices that every human wore, and it sounded cold and final like a judge reading a death sentence. He told them that the Galactic Council had made its decision after weeks of debate and discussion. Humanity was guilty of being too dangerous to exist freely among the civilized species of the galaxy. They were too violent and too unpredictable, and they advanced their technology too quickly for anyone's comfort. The sentence was quarantine, which meant humanity would be locked inside their own solar system forever. If any human tried to leave that system, they would be killed instantly without warning. Jake felt his stomach drop, but he kept his face neutral. 3 months ago, Earth had detected the first alien signals and humanity had celebrated. First contact was supposed to be the beginning of something wonderful. They had sent their best diplomats and their smartest scientists to meet with the Galactic Council. They had brought gifts and offers of friendship. They had shown recordings of Earth's culture and music and art. None of it had mattered because the Council had already decided humans were a threat. Amy stepped forward and her voice shook, just a little when she spoke. She asked how humanity could be judged so harshly, when all they had done was exist. They had not attacked anyone or threatened anyone. They had only asked to join the galactic community as equals. Earth had so much to offer and so much to learn from other species. Why would the Council throw all that away based on fear alone? A serpent-like creature named Consul Thren uncoiled from his seat, and his scales made a dry rustling sound. His species had controlled a large part of the galaxy for thousands of years, and he was not used to being questioned by anyone, especially not by primitives from a backwater planet. He told Amy that her words proved exactly why humans were dangerous. In just 200 years, humanity had gone from flying crude aircraft to building ships that could bend space itself. They turned every discovery into a weapon. They fought wars over resources and ideas and pride. Even their entertainment was filled with violence and conflict. The Council had seen this pattern before with other species, and it always ended the same way. Either the dangerous species was contained early, or they eventually tried to conquer everyone else. The Council was simply being smart by stopping humanity before they became an even bigger threat. Ben moved forward and asked what would happen if Earth refused to accept these terms. Velkoth did not hesitate when he answered. He told them that 700 warships were already in position around Earth's solar system. They carried enough weapons to destroy every planet and moon and space station that humans had built. Protocol Extinction was the official name, and it meant exactly what it sounded like. Humanity had 1 week measured in Earth time to accept the quarantine. If they refused, then the fleet would fire and Earth would become nothing but radioactive dust floating in space. The transmission ended with a harsh click, and suddenly the 3 humans were standing alone in an empty room. The holographic projections had vanished, and even the ambient noise of the massive station had faded away. For a long moment, nobody spoke because there was nothing to say that could make the situation any better. They had come here hoping to make friends, and instead they had been sentenced to eternal imprisonment or immediate death. Jake finally broke the silence by saying what they were all thinking. The Council was going to kill humanity no matter what choice Earth made. Even if every human agreed to stay inside their solar system forever, the Council would never trust them. Sooner or later, probably sooner, the aliens would decide that even a caged humanity was too dangerous. They would activate Protocol Extinction, and that would be the end of human civilization. The quarantine was just a slow death instead of a quick one, Amy nodded slowly and said they had only one real option. They had to fight back. Ben laughed, but there was no humor in the sound at all. He asked how 3 humans were supposed to fight against 700 alien warships. What weapons did Earth have that could possibly make a difference against that kind of power? Their best ships were experimental and untested. Their weapons were primitive compared to technology that had been refined over thousands of years. It would be like cavemen trying to fight jet fighters. Jake looked up through the transparent dome above them and saw stars scattered across the darkness of space. Somewhere out there was Earth with its 8 billion people who had no idea they had just been condemned to extinction. His family was down there. His friends and everyone he had ever known or loved. The council thought humans would either surrender quietly or die quickly. They had forgotten to consider a third option, which was that humans might refuse to do either. He told Amy and Ben that they needed to get back to Earth immediately and warn everyone. The military needed to prepare and the scientists needed to find any advantage they could. Civilians needed to be moved to shelters deep underground where they might survive the initial bombardment. Every resource and every person had to be mobilized because humanity was about to face its first real test. The aliens had made a mistake by giving them a week to prepare. That was 7 days to turn Earth's solar system into a fortress. 7 days to prove that humans were not prey waiting to be slaughtered. Amy asked if Jake really thought they had any chance at all. 700 ships was an impossible number to fight. Even if Earth somehow destroyed half of them, the remaining 350 would still be more than enough to annihilate the planet. The math was brutal and simple. Jake smiled, but it was not a happy expression. He told her that the council had obviously never studied human history very carefully. Every time someone had tried to exterminate humanity, the humans had found a way to survive. They were descended from ancestors who had faced ice ages and predators and diseases and wars and natural disasters. The people who gave up had died. The people who kept fighting had lived long enough to have children. That stubborn refusal to quit was written into human DNA. Ben asked what message they should send back to Earth. Jake thought about it for a moment, and then told them to send one simple sentence. Tell them that the Galactic Council has declared war on humanity, and that Earth needs to prepare to fight back with everything they have. Tell them that surrender is not an option because the aliens will kill them anyway. Tell them that humanity has 1 week to show the galaxy what happens when you try to cage a species that was born to be free. The 3 humans walked toward their small shuttle. While alarms began to sound throughout the station, the council had detected their intent to leave and was trying to stop them, but it was too late. Within minutes, they were racing away from the alien megastructure and heading back toward Earth at maximum speed. Behind them, the council was probably already celebrating their victory. Ahead of them was home and the beginning of a war that would determine whether humanity survived or became extinct. The message reached Earth 6 hours after Jake and his team had left the council station. President Claire Hoffman sat in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House, surrounded by screens showing data and maps and projections. Around the long table sat military commanders and scientists and advisors, who all looked as grim as she felt. On the main display was a tactical view of the solar system with 700 red dots positioned around Earth like a noose slowly tightening. Admiral Dan Harper was the first to speak, and his voice was rough from lack of sleep. He told the room that they had maybe 5 days before the alien fleet was in optimal firing position. After that, Earth would be hit from every direction at once. Their shields, if they even had shields, would protect against energy weapons that could vaporize cities in seconds. Their targeting systems were probably accurate enough to hit individual buildings from orbit. The bombardment would be precise and thorough and absolutely devastating. Claire asked if Earth had any options at all or if they should just start evacuating people to deep bunkers and hope some survived. A woman sitting near the end of the table cleared her throat and everyone turned to look at her. Dr. Kate Williams was young for her position as head of advanced weapons research, but she had earned her place through brilliant work on projects that most people did not even know existed. Kate activated a hologram in the center of the table, and it showed various, weapons and systems that Earth had been developing in secret. She told them about Project Helios, which had been started the moment humanity detected the first alien signals. The scientists had known that first contact could go badly, so they had prepared for the worst. If Earth could not leave the solar system, then they would turn the solar system itself into a weapon that could defend them. The plan was complex, but possible with the time they had left. Earth had 12 experimental warships that were designed for deep space combat. Against 700 alien vessels, they would be almost useless in a direct fight. But humans did not need to fight fair. They needed to fight smart. Kate explained that the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter contained billions of rocks ranging from pebbles to mountains. If they attached quantum drives to even a fraction of those asteroids, they could turn them into missiles that traveled at incredible speeds. At those velocities, the rocks would hit with more force than nuclear weapons. The alien shields were designed to stop energy beams and conventional missiles, but nobody built shields to stop mountains, moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Dan leaned forward and asked about Earth's warships. Kate brought up another display showing the 12 ships currently in various stages of readiness. The Valiant was the flagship, and it was commanded by Captain Lisa Hayes, who had more combat experience than anyone else in the fleet. The other ships included the Ranger and the Defender and the Liberty, and 8 others with names meant to inspire courage. Each ship had experimental weapons that might work brilliantly or might explode when fired. Each crew was made up of volunteers who knew they were probably not coming back from this fight. Kate continued explaining the plan. They would evacuate the moon bases and use Luna itself as a massive weapons platform. The moon had enough mass to mount railguns that could fire projectiles with devastating force. Mars colony would need to be abandoned as well because it was too exposed to defend. Every satellite and space station and mining vessel would be weaponized or repurposed. Earth would deploy fusion mines throughout the system, creating invisible traps that would fry any ship's electronics if they got too close. Someone asked about the civilian population and what they should be told. Claire made her decision instantly. She said they would tell everyone the truth. Humanity was facing extinction, and they needed every able person to help. Factories would retool overnight to produce weapons and ammunition and ship components. Engineers and welders and programmers would work around the clock. Anyone who could not fight directly would support those who could. This was not a time for secrets or half measures. This was total war, and everyone needed to understand what was at stake. The orders went out immediately through every communication channel. At first, people thought it was a joke or a test, but the images of the alien fleet made it real very quickly. The reaction was not panic, but something else entirely. Humans had always been at their best when facing impossible odds. Something about being cornered brought out a kind of fierce determination that refused to accept defeat. Within hours, factories were converting their production lines. Volunteers were lining up at recruitment centers faster than the military could process them. Scientists were sharing research that had been classified for decades because none of that mattered now. Jake and Amy and Ben arrived back on Earth and immediately joined the coordination efforts. Jake took command of the defensive strategy, while Amy worked with the diplomatic corps to send messages to any alien species that might be sympathetic. Ben coordinated with Kate to ensure the experimental weapons would be ready in time. None of them slept more than a few hours each day because there was simply too much work to do. On the 4th day, Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the Valiant watching her crew make final preparations. Her ship was small by military standards at just 300 meters long. It had experimental plasma cannons and railguns and missile pods that had never been tested in real combat. The shields were theoretical and the engines were pushed far beyond their designed limits. Everything about the Valiant was a gamble, but that was fine because this entire battle was a gamble. Her first officer, Matt Jackson, was running diagnostics and calling out status reports. Weapons were charging and showing green across the board. Engines were hot and ready for full burn. Life support was stable. The crew of 73 people were at their stations and waiting for orders. Lisa looked at their faces and saw fear but also determination. They all knew this was probably a one-way trip, but nobody had refused the assignment. Nobody had asked to be transferred. They wanted to be here defending Earth even if it cost them everything. The other 11 ships were reporting similar readiness. Captain Ben Carter commanded the Ranger, and he had a reputation for aggressive tactics. Captain Hannah Price had the Intrepid, which was actually a converted mining ship, but she had armed it with enough weapons to make it dangerous. Each captain had their own style and their own crew, but they all shared the same goal. They would hurt the alien fleet as much as possible before they died. Kate contacted Lisa through a secure channel and gave her the final piece of the puzzle. Project Helios had a last resort option that nobody wanted to use, but everyone knew might be necessary. If Earth was about to fall, they could trigger a solar weapon that would unleash the sun's power against the alien fleet. The magnetic satellites they had positioned around the star could focus and direct a coronal mass ejection, like a massive flamethrower. It would destroy most of the alien ships, but it would also destroy any human vessels caught in the blast radius. The weapon could only be fired once, and only if someone was close enough to the sun to activate the satellites. Lisa understood what Kate was really saying. If the battle went badly, someone would need to sacrifice themselves to activate the weapon. It would be a suicide mission, but it might save Earth. She acknowledged the information and did not tell her crew because there was no point worrying them about something that might not happen. The fifth day arrived and the alien fleet began moving into attack formation. They were confident and precise and utterly convinced of their superiority. Why would they not be confident when they had overwhelming numbers and better technology and thousands of years of military experience? Earth was just a primitive world that had barely begun exploring its own solar system. This should have been a simple extermination mission that would be over in less than an hour. Claire addressed the planet one final time before the battle began. She told everyone that humanity had been sentenced to death by species that feared what humans might become. She said that fear was justified because humans had always refused to accept limits imposed by others. Today they would show the galaxy that Earth would not go quietly into extinction. Today they would prove that threatening humanity was the worst mistake the Galactic Council had ever made. Today they would fight with everything they had, and if they had to die, they would make sure the aliens remembered this battle for the rest of their existence. The transmission ended, and Lisa gave the order to launch. The Valiant and the other 11 ships left Earth orbit and accelerated toward their designated positions. Behind them, the planet looked small and beautiful and fragile. Ahead of them was an alien armada that wanted to destroy everything humans had ever built. The first battle for Earth's survival was about to begin, and nobody knew if humanity would still exist when the sun rose again. The battle began with silence instead of explosions. Earth went completely dark in a way that confused the alien fleet. All broadcasts stopped. All communications ceased. Every light on every satellite and station winked out. To the Council Armada, it looked like humanity had simply given up and retreated into their cities to wait for death. The alien commanders were satisfied, because this was exactly what they expected from a primitive species facing overwhelming force. They were completely wrong about what was actually happening. The first attack came from the asteroid belt, where Kate's teams had been working around the clock. Hundreds of rocks had been fitted with quantum drives and aimed at precise coordinates. The command was given and the drives activated. The asteroids accelerated to 30% of light speed, which made them invisible to sensors until the moment of impact. 3 alien ships simply vanished in flashes of light so bright they could be seen from Earth. The debris spread outward in expanding spheres of superheated metal and vaporized. Commander Zephrol of the Ascendant Blade was monitoring the battle from his flagship when the first impacts occurred. His multiple eyes widened in shock as he watched 3 vessels disappear from his tactical display. He started shouting orders for evasive maneuvers, but his crew was already scrambling to react. His tactical officer reported multiple objects incoming from the debris field between the 4th and 5th planets. Collision warnings were screaming across every station on the bridge. 7 more ships died in the next 30 seconds. The perfect formation that the Council fleet had maintained began to break apart as ships scattered in different directions, trying to avoid the invisible projectiles. Some vessels collided with each other in their panic. Others fired their weapons at empty space, hoping to hit something. The disciplined armada became a confused mass of ships all trying to save themselves. Lisa Hayes had been waiting for exactly this moment. The Valiant emerged from behind Europa, which was one of Jupiter's largest moons. She had hidden her ship in the radiation belt where sensors could not detect her. Now she had a clear shot at an isolated destroyer that had separated from the main fleet. She gave the order to fire everything. Plasma cannons and railguns and missiles all launched at once. The destroyer's shields flickered and died under the concentrated assault. The ship broke apart in a silent explosion that scattered wreckage across thousands of kilometers. The Valiant did not stay to admire the destruction. Lisa ordered her pilot to dive back behind Jupiter before the aliens could respond. This was the strategy that Earth's ships would use throughout the battle. Strike hard from unexpected angles and then disappear before the enemy could counterattack. Never fight fair. Never give them a clear target. Make them afraid to pursue because they did not know what traps were waiting. Across the solar system, the other 11 human ships were executing similar attacks. Ben Carter brought the Ranger screaming out of the shadow of Mars and hit 2 cruisers before vanishing back into the planet's thin atmosphere. Hannah Price had positioned the Intrepid near Saturn's rings, and she used the ice particles as cover while sniping at passing vessels. Every human captain was improvising and adapting based on what worked and what did not. Matt Jackson monitored the tactical data streaming in from all the human ships, and he noticed something important. The alien shields had a weakness. After taking multiple hits in rapid succession, there was a half-second gap while the generators recharged. During that tiny window, the ships were completely vulnerable. He transmitted this information to all Earth forces immediately. Within minutes, every human captain was coordinating their attacks to exploit this flaw. 2 ships would hit a target together, forcing the shields to cycle, and then a 3rd ship would deliver the killing blow. The aliens started adapting as well. They formed smaller groups that could cover each other. They stopped pursuing human ships into areas where sensors did not work well. They began launching their own drones to scout ahead and detect ambushes. The battle was evolving quickly as both sides learned from each engagement. Dan Harper watched everything unfold from Earth's command center. Status reports flooded in constantly. The mining station near the asteroid belt had been destroyed. 3 defense satellites were gone. The Mars colony took a direct hit and went silent. Humans were dying, but they were also learning. Every battle provided new data about alien tactics and weaknesses. Kate's teams analyzed everything and uploaded improvements to the fleet in real time. The aliens were losing ships much faster than they expected, but they still had overwhelming numbers. For every vessel Earth destroyed, the Council fleet still had dozens more. The math was brutal. Earth had started with 12 ships, and now they were down to 11, after the Defender took catastrophic damage and had to be abandoned. The crew escaped in pods, but the ship itself was lost. Lisa brought the Valiant into the Neptune corridor where Hannah had spent days setting up a trap. 6 Council warships were pursuing them, believing they had finally cornered a human vessel. The aliens flew past Neptune's orbit and into the web of fusion mines that Hannah's team had deployed. The electromagnetic pulses from the explosions fried every electronic system on the pursuing ships. Their sensors went blind. Their weapons went offline. Their shields collapsed. The Valiant turned around and attacked the helpless vessels. Railgun rounds punched through hulls that were no longer protected. 2 ships went completely dark as their power cores shut down. The other 4 managed to restart their systems and retreat, but they were badly damaged. Lisa wanted to pursue, but she knew better than to overextend. The human ships had to preserve themselves because there were no reinforcements coming. On the 3rd day of fighting, Earth had lost 6 of its 12 warships. The orbital defense grid was down to 30% capacity. Luna's railguns were still operational but running low on ammunition. The Mars colony was completely destroyed. Hundreds of smaller vessels and stations had been vaporized. Thousands of people were dead. But the Council fleet had been reduced from 700 ships to just under 400. The aliens had lost more than 40% of their forces fighting an enemy they had expected to crush in hours. The alien commanders held an emergency council to discuss what was going wrong. Thren was furious and demanded to know how primitive humans were destroying ships that had conquered star systems. Corvin, who was a massive reptilian general, admitted that humans fought differently than any enemy he had encountered. They did not follow standard tactics. They did not retreat when logic said they should. They sacrificed themselves without hesitation to damage enemy vessels. Every human fought like they had nothing to lose. Velkoth made a decision that he believed would end the battle quickly. He ordered all remaining ships to converge on Earth itself. No more scattered formations. No more chasing human vessels around the system. They would form an impenetrable wall around the planet and begin bombardment at dawn. There would be nowhere for humans to hide and no way to stop the barrage. Billions would die in the first hour. The planet would be uninhabitable within a day. The order spread through the fleet and the ships began moving into position. Every vessel was assigned specific coordinates to create a sphere of destruction around Earth. At sunrise, they would fire simultaneously, and nothing could survive that much concentrated firepower. In Earth's command center, Claire received the intelligence from their remaining scouts. Dan showed her the projection of how the bombardment would unfold. The first wave would target military installations and cities. The second wave would hit infrastructure and industrial centers. The third wave would simply glass whatever was left. There was no way to evacuate enough people in time. Even the deep bunkers might not be enough protection. Claire asked if their ships could break through the blockade. Dan shook his head. The 6 remaining human vessels could not possibly fight through 400 alien warships. It would be suicide and it would accomplish nothing. They had fought brilliantly and bought Earth precious time, but the numbers were finally catching up with them. Kate spoke up and said there was still one option left. Project Helios had a final protocol that nobody wanted to use. If they could lure the entire alien fleet close enough to the sun, they could activate the solar weapon. It would destroy almost everything in range, including any human ships, but it might save Earth. The room fell silent as everyone understood what Kate was proposing. Someone would have to sacrifice themselves to make it work. Someone would have to fly close enough to the sun to activate the magnetic satellites. Someone would have to die so that Earth could live. Claire looked at the faces around the table and saw resignation mixed with determination. This was always how it was going to end. Humans had never been good at surrender. They were much better at taking their enemies down with them. Claire Hoffman stared at the tactical display showing 400 alien warships forming a perfect sphere around Earth. In less than 12 hours, they would begin firing and nothing could stop them. She had been president for 6 years and had faced economic crises and natural disasters and political conflicts. But nothing compared to this. Her entire species was about to be wiped out unless someone did something impossible. She opened a secure channel to the 6 remaining human ships. The faces of the captains appeared on her screen looking tired and battered but not defeated. Lisa Hayes had a burn scar on her cheek from a console explosion. Ben Carter's uniform was torn and stained with blood that might have been his own. Hannah Price looked like she had not slept in days. The others were in similar condition, but their eyes were still sharp and focused. Claire told them that she was about to ask something terrible of them. She explained the final protocol for Project Helios. If they could draw the alien fleet toward the sun and activate the magnetic satellites, they could unleash a solar weapon powerful enough to destroy most of the enemy ships. The coronal mass ejection would travel at millions of kilometers per hour, and nothing could withstand that kind of energy. But the human ships would need to be close to the sun to trigger the satellites, and there would be no time to escape. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then Lisa smiled, and it was not a sad smile at all. She said that her crew had volunteered for this mission, knowing they probably would not come home. Every person on every ship had made peace with that reality days ago. They had not come this far to run away at the end. If this was how they could save Earth, then this was how they would die. Ben agreed immediately. He said his ship was barely holding together anyway after 3 days of constant fighting. The Ranger had taken so much damage that half the systems were offline. Going out in a blaze of glory sounded better than waiting for some alien missile to finish them off. Hannah and the other captains voiced their support as well. 73 people on 6 ships all agreeing to sacrifice themselves so that billions could live. Claire felt tears in her eyes, but she kept her voice steady. She told them that humanity would never forget what they were about to do. Their names would be remembered forever. Children would learn about them in schools. Monuments would be built in their honor. They would become legends. Lisa cut her off gently. She said they were not doing this for glory or monuments. They were doing it because it was the right thing to do and because someone had to. Earth needed heroes and they were volunteering for the job. She asked Claire to make sure their families knew they died protecting everything they loved. That was all the monument they needed. The plan was straightforward but incredibly dangerous. The 6 human ships would group together and make themselves a target too tempting to ignore. They would broadcast taunts and challenges and draw the alien fleet away from Earth. The Council commanders were already frustrated after days of guerrilla warfare. They would see a chance to finally destroy Earth's remaining forces and they would take it. Once the aliens were committed to the pursuit, the human ships would dive toward the sun. Kate explained the technical details. The ships would use the sun's gravity well to slingshot themselves around the star at tremendous speeds. At those velocities, the alien weapons would not be able to track them properly. They would emerge on the far side of the sun and punch through the alien formation from an unexpected direction. The confusion would last for maybe 30 seconds, and that would be enough time to activate Helios. Matt Jackson asked what the activation range was. Kate told him they would need to be within 5 million kilometers of the sun's surface. At that distance, the heat would start melting the ship hulls even with shields at maximum. The crews would have maybe 40 seconds between activation and death. It was not much time, but it would have to be enough. The 6 ships began moving into formation. Lisa positioned the Valiant at the front because she had the most experienced crew. The Ranger and Intrepid flanked her on both sides. The Liberty and Guardian and Defender, too, took up positions in the rear. They looked small and fragile compared to the massive alien warships, but they had proven over the past 3 days that size did not determine who won a fight. Earth's remaining defense forces armed every weapon they had left. If the plan failed and the aliens still attacked the planet, then humans would fight to the very last breath. The orbital stations prepared to ram alien ships if necessary. The ground forces readied every missile and gun they possessed. Nobody was surrendering. Nobody was giving up. If Earth was going to die, then they would make the Council pay for every meter of ground. Lisa opened a channel to all 6 ships and spoke to every crew member. She told them that what they were about to do would echo through history. Generations from now, people would tell stories about this day, about how 73 humans faced an alien armada and refused to back down, about how they turned the sun itself into a weapon, about how they saved Earth when everyone else had given up hope. She said it had been an honor to serve with them all. The responses came back from every ship. Engineers and pilots and gunners and medics all saying they were ready. Some made jokes to lighten the mood. Others said goodbye to families who could not hear them. A few prayed to whatever gods they believed in, but all of them stayed at their stations because running away was not something humans did when their home was threatened. The 6 ships accelerated toward the alien blockade at full speed. They broadcast open channels taunting the Council fleet. Lisa called them cowards who could only fight when they had overwhelming numbers. Ben said their technology was outdated and their tactics were predictable. Hannah told them that 1 human was worth 10 aliens. The insults were crude and simple, but they worked because the alien commanders took the bait. Zephyral saw the human ships approaching, and he could not believe their arrogance. 6 tiny vessels against 400 warships, and they were actually attacking. He gave orders for his fleet to destroy them immediately. This would be the end of human resistance, and then they could proceed with the bombardment. He watched as his ships broke formation to pursue the humans. Discipline gave way to the desire for revenge. Every captain wanted to be the one who killed the last human vessels. The chase began exactly as Lisa had planned. The 6 Earth ships raced toward the inner system with the entire alien fleet following. Zephyral was so focused on catching his prey that he did not notice how perfectly the humans were controlling the pursuit. They stayed just far enough ahead that the aliens kept chasing, but close enough that it seemed they could be caught. It was like wolves chasing deer, except the deer were leading the wolves into a trap. Earth watched as its last defenders drew the enemy away from the planet. Every screen showed the same scene. 6 small ships fleeing toward the sun with hundreds of alien vessels in pursuit. Some people prayed. Others watched in silence. Parents held their children. Strangers comforted each other. Everyone understood that these 73 people were about to give everything so that Earth might survive. The sun loomed larger in the viewports of the human ships. The heat was already becoming noticeable despite the shields. Lisa checked her instruments and confirmed they were on course. The alien fleet was fully committed now. They had abandoned their positions around Earth to chase these last few targets. It was exactly what the humans needed. She opened a channel to Matt and asked if he was scared. He laughed and said he was terrified, but also weirdly calm. They had done everything possible. Earth had a chance now. Whatever happened next was out of their hands. Lisa understood exactly what he meant. There was a strange peace in knowing you had done your absolute best, even if your best meant dying. The solar corona filled their screens with light so bright it hurt to look at. The temperature gauges were climbing rapidly. Systems were starting to fail from the heat, but they were almost at the slingshot point. Just a few more seconds and they would whip around the sun faster than anything in human history. Just a few more seconds and they would show the galaxy what humans could do when pushed to the edge. Lisa gave the order and all 6 ships dove into the sun's outer atmosphere. The heat was impossible and the shields were screaming warnings across every console. Lisa gripped her command chair as the Valiant plunged into the sun's chromosphere where temperatures reached millions of degrees. The hull was glowing red and then white, and the air inside the ship was getting harder to breathe. Matt was calling out system failures one after another. but his voice stayed calm because panicking would not help anyone. The gravity of the sun grabbed them like a giant hand and pulled them faster than any ship had ever traveled. The 6 human vessels whipped around the star in a trajectory that bent physics to its absolute limit. Engineers had calculated this maneuver in theory, but nobody had ever actually tried it because it should have been impossible. The G-forces were crushing, and several crew members passed out despite the dampeners. But the ships held together through sheer luck and stubborn human engineering. They emerged on the far side of the sun, traveling at speeds that made their sensors useless. Everything was a blur of light and radiation. Lisa could not see where they were going, but she did not need to, because Kate had programmed the course into the navigation computer. They were aimed directly at the alien fleet which was positioned on the other side waiting to bombard Earth. The Council ships never saw them coming. One moment their sensors showed empty space, and the next moment 6 human vessels appeared from nowhere moving faster than missiles. The perfect defensive sphere around Earth shattered as the human ships punched through like bullets through paper. Alien captains screamed orders, but there was no time to react. The humans were already past them and disappearing into the chaos they had created. Zephril realized too late that he had been tricked. The humans had never been running away. They had been leading his entire fleet into a trap. He tried to contact his ships to reform the defensive positions, but communications were scrambled by the electromagnetic interference from the sun. His fleet was scattered and confused and completely out of position. He started shouting orders to regroup, but nobody could hear him over the chaos. Lisa checked her position and saw they were exactly where they needed to be. 5 million kilometers from the sun's surface, with the alien fleet clustered nearby trying to figure out what had just happened. She opened the final protocol and entered the activation codes that Kate had given her. The magnetic satellites that Earth had positioned around the sun 3 days ago came online and began redirecting the star's natural fury. On Earth, every screen showed the same thing. The sun seemed to pulse, and then a tongue of fire erupted from its surface. The coronal mass ejection was massive beyond comprehension. Billions of tons of superheated plasma traveling at incredible speeds and aimed like a weapon. The magnetic fields focused it into a stream instead of letting it spread in all directions. It was the sun's breath turned into a weapon, and nothing could survive it. The wave hit the alien fleet and shields failed instantly. Hulls melted like wax in a furnace. Ships that had survived thousands of years and conquered dozens of worlds vanished in seconds. Some captains tried to run, but there was nowhere to go that was fast enough. The solar fire consumed them all. 300 ships died in the first minute. Another 60 were crippled beyond repair. Only 37 vessels on the outer edge of the formation managed to escape by activating emergency jumps that tore holes in space itself. The 6 human ships were at the center of the blast. Lisa saw her hull temperature gauge spike into numbers that should not exist. She looked at Matt, and he looked back at her, and they both smiled because they had done it. Earth was safe. The alien fleet was destroyed. Humanity would survive. The fire consumed them, and there was no pain because everything happened too fast. One moment the Valiant existed, and the next moment it was scattered atoms drifting in space. The same happened to the Ranger and the Intrepid, and the Liberty and the Guardian and the Defender too. 73 people turned into light and heat and memory. On Earth, people watched their heroes die and millions cried openly. Strangers hugged each other. Families held hands. The silence lasted for a full minute as everyone processed what they had just witnessed. Then someone started clapping and others joined in. And soon the entire planet was cheering for the people who had saved them. The sound echoed through streets and buildings and across every continent. Humanity was celebrating its survival and mourning its dead at the same time. Claire stood in the Situation Room watching the tactical display update. The alien fleet was gone. Only 37 damaged ships remained, and they were running away as fast as their engines could carry them. Earth was safe for now. The bombardment would not happen. Billions of people would wake up tomorrow morning. She opened a planetary broadcast and her face appeared on every screen in every city. Her eyes were red from crying, but her voice was strong. She told her species that they had been sentenced to extinction by aliens who feared what humans might become. She said those aliens had sent 700 warships to destroy Earth before humanity could challenge their dominance. But the aliens had failed, because they made one critical mistake. They forgot that humans fight hardest when they have everything to lose. Claire spoke about the 73 heroes who had flown into the sun to save everyone else. She said their names one by one so that people would remember. Lisa Hayes, Matt Jackson, Ben Carter, Hannah Price, every pilot and engineer and gunner, and medic who had volunteered for a mission they knew was one way. She said monuments would be built and schools would be named after them. Children who were not even born yet would learn their stories. But more importantly, Claire sent a message to the Galactic Council and to every species that was listening. She said that today humanity had proven they were not prey waiting to be slaughtered. They were not a primitive species that would surrender when threatened. They had taken the worst the galaxy could throw at them, and they had survived. They had turned their own star into a weapon and used it to destroy an armada that should have been unstoppable. She told the council that if they wanted peace, then Earth would gladly talk. Humans preferred to make friends rather than enemies. But if the council wanted war, then they had better bring more than 700 ships next time, because humanity would be ready. Earth's message to the galaxy was simple. We are here, we are staying, and we will defend ourselves with everything we have. The transmission ended, and the response from across the galaxy was immediate. Some species called for renewed attacks on Earth. Others said humans had earned respect through their victory. A few suggested that maybe the council had been wrong to try exterminating them in the first place. The debate would rage for years, and the political consequences would reshape galactic civilization. But on Earth, people began rebuilding. They repaired the damaged stations and started constructing new ships. They improved their weapons and their defenses. Scientists studied every scrap of data from the battle to understand alien technology better. The military trained new crews and built new vessels. Everyone understood that this fight might not be over. Kate stood at a memorial site where they had placed a beacon in the exact spot where the 6 ships had died. The beacon broadcast continuously into space so that anyone passing through this region would know what happened here. It told the story of 73 humans who had faced impossible odds and won. It said that when you threaten Earth, humans will fight back with their dying breath. Dan Harper visited the families of the fallen and told them personally what their loved ones had accomplished. He attended funerals and memorial services. He listened to children ask why their parents were not coming home. He had no good answers except that sometimes heroes had to die so that others could live. It was not fair, and it was not right, but it was the reality of war. Jake Morrison stood on a hillside looking up at the stars. 3 months ago, he had gone to meet the Galactic Council hoping to make friends. Instead, he had come home to prepare for war. Now, Earth had won its first battle, but he knew there would be more. The galaxy was full of species that might see humanity as a threat. Some might try to finish what the Council had started. But Jake also knew that Earth was different now. They had faced extinction and survived. They had fought an enemy with overwhelming advantages and won. They had proven to themselves and to the galaxy that humans could not be easily destroyed. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Amy stood in the rebuilt command center helping coordinate Earth's new defensive network. The solar system was becoming a fortress with weapons platforms and sensor arrays and automated defenses. If anyone else tried to attack, they would find that Earth had learned from this battle. Humanity would not be caught unprepared again. Ben Torres worked with diplomatic teams sending messages to species that might be sympathetic to Earth. Not everyone in the galaxy supported the Council's decision to exterminate humanity. Some civilizations believed in peaceful coexistence. Others simply thought the Council had too much power. If humans could find allies, then maybe the next war could be prevented. Months passed, and Earth continued preparing for whatever came next. The economy shifted to support military production. Universities focused on weapons research and defensive technology. The culture changed as people realized they were no longer alone in the universe and that some of their neighbors wanted them dead. But humans also continued doing what they always did. They laughed and loved and created art and music. They had families and pursued dreams. They refused to let fear control their lives. The threat of another attack hung over them, but they would not spend every moment afraid. That was not how humans worked. A year after the battle, a ship appeared at the edge of the solar system broadcasting peaceful intentions. It was an ambassador from a species that disagreed with the Council's actions. They wanted to open dialogue with Earth and discuss mutual defense treaties. Claire met with them and began negotiations that would eventually lead to humanity's first true alien allies. Earth's message had been heard across the galaxy. Humans were here to stay, and they would fight anyone who tried to remove them. But they also wanted peace and friendship with those willing to offer it. The Galactic Council had tried to end humanity and failed. Now they would have to accept Earth as an equal, or face the consequences of making humans into permanent enemies.